Welcome to the training site for DERA's environmental farming scheme. This training module is an introduction for the EFS wider level option, creation of riparian buffer, 2 metre wide, planted with native trees. The term riparian buffer refers to an area along a watercourse and standing waters such as lakes or ponds. For the training, you will need to watch this video, and this is followed by 4 questions which you have to answer. Further details about the environmental farming scheme are found on the DERA website. This includes the information sheet for each of the options. This training module will cover a number of aspects, including explaining what the module is and why you might want to establish it. It will outline locations that it might be useful to establish it in. Then it gives certain things that you must do and certain things that you must not do to meet scheme requirements. It outlines the type of checks that DERA will carry out as their responsibility for the scheme. It gives you the payment rates. It discusses the option of additional capital items and finishes with some further advice which should give you practical help to make a success of this project. Basically, it is about erecting a stock-proof fence 2 metres on average from the top of a bank or watercourse. Native trees are then planted in blocks in the buffer between the fence and the bank top. A watercourse is defined as a dry shuck, a wet shuck, a stream, a river, a lake or a waterway which is at least 1 metre wide on average. The stock-proof fence in this case will be sheep wire and 3 rows of barbed wire, or else 5 rows of barbed wire. Regarding the amount of the option that's required, the amount that is detailed in the agreement is the amount that must be done. Overall, there's a minimum length of 10 metres and the maximum length will be as per the maximum agreement value. Why might you want to establish this? Well, there are a number of advantages, including improving water quality and biodiversity. It will reduce bank poaching and thereby stabilise the banks. It will reduce the amount of sedimentation and pollution and overall enhance the biodiversity on your farm. Where might you establish it? Well, suitable sites include watercourses which are prone to bank erosion, in places where bankside damage or runoff have occurred, or where there is limited riparian vegetation. However, this option must not be sited on permanent grassland sensitive fields, nor on breeding wader sites. This option is established in year 1 and must be retained and maintained in the same area for the duration of the EFS agreement. You must adhere to the scheme requirements and controls as detailed in the option information sheet, and these are summarised here and in the following slides. You must follow the environmental farming scheme general requirements. You must plant native trees and shrubs, erect protective fences, tree guards and canes by the 1st of June in year 1 of the agreement. You must complete the claimed length in the approved field or fields, and you must establish an average of 2 square metres of riparian buffer for each metre length. You must plant approved native trees and shrubs from the list, and these must be at approximately 2.5 metre spacings. They must be in blocks that are 7 metres by 2 metres and with approximately 10 metres between the blocks unplanted. And also you must protect each tree with a tree guard and cane. This is a tree planting plan for this 2 metre riparian buffer. Note that the blocks are 7 metres by 2 metres with an average 2.5 trees in each of the blocks. and in between there is an approximately 10 metre length that remains unplanted. Regarding the tree species, this is a list of the approved species for planting both trees and shrubs. Take into account the soil type, the drainage, the exposure, and look at the trees growing in the surrounding location before making your selection. Note that sycamore and beech are not allowed. For the tree planting, you include a willow tree and at least 3 other tree species in the mix of trees to be used. And for the shrub planting, you include hawthorn and at least 1 other shrub species in the mix required. Note that for the planting, 70% of the area should be trees and 30% of the area should be shrubs. You must erect the claimed length of fence to the scheme specification on the field side of the buffer. You must use fence posts with a minimum 15-year life, and you must retain and manage the same area and location for the duration of the agreement. You must retain the buffer for 10 years after the scheme end date. You must maintain the protective fence in a stock-proof condition for the duration of the agreement. And if you're operating as part of the higher level scheme, then you must establish, retain and manage the buffer as detailed in the site-specific remedial management plan. You must keep field records detailing the area created, the location, the date or dates work is completed, and all the management requirements, including integrated pest management requirements. As indicated, you need to keep records, and these need to be kept at field level, and they need to be kept each year of the works undertaken for this option, and also for any capital items associated with the option. This is an example of the records you can keep, and the format used here is available on the DERA website. You may, however, prefer to use your own format to keep the required information. Please note that there is a separate training module on the aspect of record keeping to give you some help with this aspect of the scheme. You also need to keep agreement level records each year of the 2 parts of integrated pest management as highlighted here. This means indicating, as shown here by ticking a box, that you've assessed whether there are any issues with harmful organisms or pests in the establishment or maintenance of the options in your agreement. And secondly, that you've checked and recorded what measures you have taken to protect the option from such pests. You must not establish this option on permanent grassland sensitive fields or on breeding wader sites. You must not cut or graze the riparian margin. You must not apply organic or inorganic fertilizer to the buffer. And you must not plant non-native trees such as beech or sycamore. DERA will undertake certain checks to verify that the works proposed and paid for have been completed and are to the required standard. The range of checks for this option will be based on the requirements and controls detailed in the option information sheet. The checks can be of a number of types and will include firstly office-based administrative checks. Secondly, they can include technologically based checks such as control with remote sensing. Or thirdly, there can be on-site checks such as rapid field visits or on-the-spot checks. Some of the checks that may be carried out on this option are summarised in the next few slides. DERA can check that the erection of the protective fence is completed by the 1st of June in year 1 of the agreement. They will check that the protective fence is erected to scheme specification. They'll check that native trees and shrubs are planted and the tree guards and canes are erected by the 1st of June in year 1 of the agreement. They'll check that the claimed area is completed in the approved field or fields, and they'll check that an average 2 metres area of buffer is established for each metre length. Other checks will be that the trees and shrubs are planted at approximately 2.5 metre spacing, that they're in blocks 7 metres by 2 metres with approximately 10 metres unplanted between blocks. They'll check that they're from the approved species list and that they're protected by a tree guard and cane. They'll check that the claimed area is completed to scheme specification. They'll check that the riparian buffer is not grazed or cut. They'll check that no organic or inorganic fertiliser is applied. They can check that the same area and location of riparian buffer is retained and managed for the duration of the agreement. And they'll check that newly planted native trees and shrubs are successfully established for the duration of the agreement. They will check that the riparian buffer protective fence is maintained in a stock-proof condition for the duration of the agreement. And if you're operating as part of the hire scheme, they'll check that everything is included as per the site-specific remedial management plan. They'll also check that the necessary field records are kept. The payment rate for this option is £6.31 per metre in year 1, and subsequently in years 2 to 5 the payment rate is £0.07 per metre. In terms of capital items, this is the list of additional capital items available in association with this option. Only if these were added at application stage will they form part of the agreement. Where they are part of the agreement, you should complete the separate training module relating to the relevant capital item or items, and also consult the relevant capital item information sheet. Please note that you should only claim for an additional gate and 2 gate posts and stock-proof fence if you require more than 1 access point per 150 metres, as there already is a payment in year 1 for 1 gate and 2 posts per 150 metres. We recommend that you make use of this further advice that appears in the next few slides, and this should help you establish and maintain the option successfully. For example, if you need to get approval from the Department for Infrastructure Transport Northern Ireland before gates or gate posts can be erected along a roadway. Also, you should not use the strip for vehicle access except for necessary maintenance. And if you are establishing it on a march boundary, then you must agree this with the person who has control of the neighbouring land. You should not plant trees within 20 metres of overhead power lines or other overhead and underground services, nor near roadsides, nor close to buildings, nor where they will interfere with the future farm development. You may spot spray 1 metre diameter patches 3 to 4 weeks before planting grass sites where this can be justified as part of the integrated pest management implementation. You do not plant trees in farmland habitats or above the natural tree line. When you plant, 70% of the area should be tree species and 30% shrubs. You should plant from November to mid-March, but not when the ground is frozen or waterlogged. And bare root whips, they should be kept in moist soil until they're planted, and do not let the roots dry out. This is now the final slide of this training module, and there are a number of things you need to do next as part of your training. You must complete the questions for this option and these follow after the video. It's essential that you do this so as to register that your training on the option is completed. Secondly, you should also read the information sheet that relates to this option, and this is available on the lesson site and also on the EFS section of the DAERA website. And finally, if you have further options or capital items in your agreement, you can take the training for them after you complete the questions for this option.